Hi, everyone. Welcome back to AMC Presents. We've got an exciting episode for you today. Joining us are composer and arranger Matthew Sheeran and Grammy-winning guitarist John Schneider, here to dive into the fascinating world of microtonality, what it is, where it comes from, and how it's transforming the way we experience music. This is a topic you won't want to miss, especially as it becomes a rising trend in Western classical music. If you're new here, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And as always, we love hearing from you, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to us. If you'd like to help us continue bringing you great content, visit us at patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic. Let's get started.
Define microtonality.
I can do it in 3 words if you want, but it might be offensive to microtonalists. I guess out of tune would probably be the very easiest way of describing it. So these are notes that are not on the piano, or some of them are on the piano and some of them aren't. So on the piano, we have 12 notes. Most music is written using 12 notes, the chromatic scale, 12-tone music, tonal music, but in other cultures, they use different notes. So most non-Western cultures will use what are called microtonal scales, but to them, our music would be microtonal because we're using notes that aren't on their scale. So there's a sort of a lot of cultural sort of bias to what we think of as non-standard tuning, and there are many types of microtonality, and the one that I'm exploring, or Blackwood is exploring in this album, is what's called equal temperament. So equal temperament is where you divide the octave into equal amount of parts. So for example, if you divide it into 12, we have the chromatic scale. If we divide it into 6, we have the whole tone scale, which is in 6 times 2 is 12. So that's still in our usual system. If you divide it into 3, you've got the augmented chords. If you divide it into 4, you've got the diminished seventh. Now we come on to numbers where if you divide it, there are notes that aren't in the 12-tone scale. So for example, if you divide it into 5, you get a sort of pentatonic scale, but it's not exactly the same as the black notes on the piano. This division of the octave is very popular in a lot of non-Western music. A lot of flutes play in this scale. Similarly for 7, if you divide the octave into 7, there's a lot of, for example, Thai music uses a similar scale. So if you divide it into 7, you don't have any modes anymore. So the 7 notes equals scale is very similar to the whole tone scale. So with the whole tone scale, if you transpose it up a whole tone, you've got the same scale. It's the same with the. I hope there's not too much music theory here, but you can't avoid it sometimes. Now Blackwood's exploring equal temperaments of notes more than 12. He's not so interested in the 5-note equal, 7-note equal, for example. So he's exploring divisions of the octave from 13 to 24. Now, maybe a better way of explaining this would be to compare this to something that non-musicians would be familiar with, which is the clock. So with a clock, we've got 12 hours, don't we? What if we had 13 hours on that clock? Or, we've got 12 months in the year. What if we had 16 months in the year? What would that world be like? So let's say we've got 16 months in the year. The seasons are still going to be the same length as they would be with 12 months in the year. So there's a similarity there, but with 13, there's no similarity at all. So this is what Blackwood explores in the dividing the octave into 16 notes. There's the diminished 7th chord is the same as the one in 12, so that's quite a big feature of that composition. But with 13 notes, there's just nothing in common at all, and that's a very strange alien sort of landscape. But so Blackwood chooses a different historical style for every single etude, the one which works best for the music theory of that particular microtonal scale. So You have Baroque music, for example, for the 21 divisions of the octave. You have sort of Scriabin, early Stravinsky for 18 notes. You got Schubert for 22 notes. For 23 notes, which is a prime number, so it has nothing in common with 12. He couldn't find anything in common at all with the 12-tone equal scale. So he looked to Balinese gamelan, and he uses the slendro and the pelog scale. And then 17 notes and 19 notes, they're very similar to 12 notes in that they have diatonic scales. So that music is the most sort of normal sounding of all of them.
And the process that you used, as I understand it, is you had the players in different cubicles.
Yeah, isolation booths. Yeah, they're in different soundproof rooms.
Right. And so they played the music as close as they could with regular tuning, and then you would go in and adjust that.
Yeah, that's partially true. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's probably the easiest way to describe it. Because rounding up every note to the nearest 12-tone note wouldn't necessarily sound musical. So I had to sort of do a lot of tweaking in order to get the expression, the gestures. I had to there was a lot of it's a bit like translating into another language. There's things that just don't work. So if you're translating into Italian English nouns and you're writing a song and you want that to fit, there aren't any nouns in Italian with one syllable. So this is a unsolvable problem, and they were unsolvable problems in some of the translations. I think a good way of describing it is, so when Schoenberg invented his atonal music, the music sounds very radical, but under the hood, it's very the orchestration, the gestures, the structure is very similar to late Romantic music by Brahms and Wolf, composers, or early Schoenberg. So it's as though if we turned Schoenberg's music into this late Romantic music and then retuned it on the computer to 12-tone music, as in atonal music, in the early 20th century, before people knew how to play this music, you would have got a better result than what early performances of Schoenberg. So we're at a similar sort of stage, perhaps, with microtonal work, that maybe these pieces will be playable in the future, but this is the sort of stepping stone to that sort of maybe in 100 years' time, performers will have this will be playable for them.
It seems to me that because if you have to put it in Western notation, it's always going to be a problem of translating. And to some degree, Western musical notation works within its system, but may not work in other systems.
What's interesting is some of it doesn't work within its system, and this isn't appreciated. So the system is based on 7-letter names, but something like the whole tone scale or the octatonic scale, which have 6 notes or 8 notes, there's a lot of sort of problems notating those in the normal notation system. So that this isn't just a problem with microtonal notation system. So it's a bit more complicated than that, perhaps.
But the huge revelation that became my personal revolution when I returned to the States, somebody introduced me to a guitar with frets in a different place, and I was astounded. I was giving a talk at a conference about all of my discoveries, and the person after me was giving a talk about moving the frets and all these tuning systems. I thought, what in the world are you talking about? And I met with him afterwards, and he sat down for an hour and played for me. Wow, really? That changed my life. And everything I've done ever since then has been based on that one encounter. The whole concept that the notes we were handed on those 12 frets to the octave, it's totally arbitrary, it's historically determined. And there's, the human ear is capable of hearing more than 500 notes to the octave, and we're only using 12 of them. What's wrong with this picture? So I started exploring different cultures and realizing, oh heavens, Indian music, Persian music, Arabic music, they have far more notes to choose from than we do. And it turns out that there is in Western music a whole history of that too. And that's where I started to explore, which is why we ended up with this album.
Would you say that alternative methods of tuning are termed microtonal from the viewpoint of the European system of equal temperament?
Microtonal music is now considered any music that does not use pitches that are in the standard 12-tone equal tempered scale. Now, ironically, there's a whole school of thought called just intonation, which uses acoustically pure intervals. And that, in fact, is the unavoidable truth of all acoustic music. If you play a single note, embedded within it is something called the harmonic series, and that determines what is in tune or not. So, literally, from a physical point of view, modern 12-tone equal temperament is microtonal because it's off base of what is true in the physical pure tone world. And yet we've been brought up to say, no, this is normal, not that. What really got me involved with refretted guitars in the beginning was the music of Bach, because I discovered way too late in life, but other people have been discovering it at the same time, that the music of Bach was not played in modern equal temperament. And that was just a revelation. And that made me go further to ask the question, well, who else has been changing it? And I found out about Harry Partch, about Lou Harrison, about Lamont Young, all of those people. So most of the albums I've put out have been kind of fringy. So in the meantime, somebody asked me a couple of years ago, can't you just do a normal album? And I said, oh, well, I could, but everybody does normal. What would it sound like if you tuned it the same way Bach's harpsichord would have been tuned, or his organs, or things like that? And that's what led me down that path. I thought, okay, let's look at all those pieces that have a contact with the past, all the way back to the Renaissance. The Renaissance tuning was even more wildly divergent than the well temperament of Bach, which of course is not equal temperament. So I took all my experience of micro tunings and historical tunings and said, great, I can do that too. I would love to show people what it's like to hear that music, but from a historical tuning point of view. That's the basic concept. And you know, the thrill about using a guitar for that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So one of the joys about using instruments, or pluck string instrument, is that you can see the microtonality as well as hear it.
It sometimes sounds out of tune to me.
Well, it is literally out of tune with your expectations.
Yes, right.
So, and some people suggest, in fact, Lou Harrison, who detested equal temperament, and said people's ears have gotten in those grooves and they can't get out of the ruts.
And to some degree, I understand the argument that Western classical music misses out on is the diversity of sound, because we're so locked into that regular scales. Kind of hearing music in a new way and appreciating there's probably more out there to be enjoyed that hasn't necessarily been composed by with the dead white man, as they say.
Yeah, no, it's very true, very true. Another joy of the high-tech world. We can taste anything, anywhere, anytime.
And that wraps up our fascinating conversation with Matthew Sheeran and John Schneider. Today, we explored the world of microtonality, what it is, how it challenges traditional Western tuning systems, and its incredible potential to expand our musical horizons. From alternative tunings to historical insights, we've learned how microtonality is reshaping the way we think about and experience music. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss out on more incredible discussions like this one. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and join the conversation. And of course, your support helps us keep bringing you these amazing stories. Head over to patreon.com/AtlantaMusicCritic to join our community and help us keep the music alive. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on AMC Presents.